The silence in a 4,000-square-foot home does not just sit there. It presses down on you. It fills the vaulted ceilings and the open-concept hallways like water filling a sinking ship. I sat at the head of our custom quartz dining table, with my back perfectly straight and my hands folded in my lap. The digital clock on the microwave displayed 11 at night in bright green lines that hurt my eyes. In front of me sat 2 plates of lobster ravioli that had long since turned into a cold and rubbery paste. The sauce had congealed into a thick orange film. The candles I had lit at 7 in the evening had burned down to nothing but puddles of wax that threatened to drip onto the expensive linen runner. Today was my 30th birthday. 30 was supposed to be a milestone. It was supposed to be the year I finally felt like I had arrived. I was a senior management consultant at a top firm. I owned a home in the most coveted neighborhood in Austin. I had a husband who looked like he stepped out of a Ralph Lauren catalog. By all metrics, I was winning. But winning felt remarkably cold. I reached for the bottle of wine that sat between the 2 untouched plates. It was a Cabernet Sauvignon that cost $200. We had bought it 2 years ago in Napa Valley during a trip that was supposed to be romantic, but ended up being mostly about Brett networking with potential investors in the hotel lobby. We had made a pact that day. We agreed to save this specific bottle for our 5th wedding anniversary. We promised not to open it for anything less than a monumental celebration of our enduring love. I gripped the neck of the bottle. The glass was cool and smooth against my palm. I did not bother with a corkscrew because I had already opened it 3 hours ago, when the hope first started to die. I poured the dark red liquid into my oversized crystal glass until it reached the rim. It was a violation of wine etiquette and a violation of our pact. I did not care. I took a long sip. The wine was rich and complex with notes of dark cherry and oak, but it tasted like ash in my mouth. My phone buzzed against the marble tabletop. It had been buzzing all night. The screen lit up the darkened room with a blinding white glow. It was another notification from Instagram. "Happy birthday, Haley. Hope Brett is spoiling you rotten." I stared at the message from my college roommate. She had included 3 heart emojis and a gif of a woman throwing confetti. Beneath her comment were a dozen others. Friends and family members and colleagues were all chiming in to wish me a wonderful entrance into a new decade. Then came the questions. Where is the birthday boy? Show us the husband. Betty has a huge surprise planned. My thumb hovered over the screen. The blue light illuminated the engagement ring on my left hand. It was a 2-carat diamond that Brett had picked out himself because he said it suited his brand. I looked at the empty chair across from me. It was pushed in perfectly. The napkin was still folded into an intricate swan shape that I had learned from a YouTube tutorial at 6 o'clock that evening. I typed out a reply. He is setting up a huge surprise in the backyard. No phones allowed. I hit send. Then I liked 3 other comments and posted a story of just the wine bottle with the caption, "Vintage Love." It was a lie so effortless it scared me. The truth was that Brett was not in the backyard. He was not setting up fairy lights or preparing a fireworks display. Brett was gone. He had called me at 4 in the afternoon. I was still at the office wrapping up a conference call that I should have been leading from Chicago. I had canceled a 3-day business trip to the Windy City because Brett had insisted. He had told me 2 weeks ago that I needed to be home for my 30th. He had promised a night I would never forget. "Hey, babe." His voice had been rushed and breathless against the background noise of traffic. "I have a situation." My stomach had tightened instantly. A situation. That was his favorite word. In the world of high-end real estate sales, everything was a situation. A client getting cold feet was a situation. A closing date getting pushed back was a situation. A scratch on his luxury sedan was a situation. "What is it?" I had asked while signing off on a budget report. "I am leaving the office in 10 minutes to start cooking." "Big client," he had said. "Someone from the West Coast just flew in. He wants to see the sprawling estate on Lake Travis right now. If I land this listing, Haley, it is a 6-figure commission. But it is my birthday." I know. He had sounded annoyed rather than apologetic. "I will make it quick. I will show him the property and take him for a quick drink to seal the deal and be home by 7, 8 at the latest. Just start without me if I am late." That was 7 hours ago. I took another sip of wine. The liquid sloshed in the glass. I had called him at 8. It went to voicemail. I called him at 9. Voicemail. I called him at 10. The phone rang and rang until the automated operator told me the mailbox was full. I knew I should be worried. A normal wife would be worried. A normal wife would be calling hospitals or checking the police scanner app. But I was not worried about his safety. I felt a deep and familiar hollow sensation in my chest that had nothing to do with fear of an accident. I knew exactly what this was. I closed my eyes and let the memory wash over me. It was a flashback from 6 months ago. We were standing in this very kitchen. I had just come home from a 12-hour day to find the sink full of dishes and Brett sitting on the couch texting. I had asked him gently if he could help me with the cleanup since I had an early meeting. He had exploded. "You are suffocating me, Haley," he had shouted. He threw his phone onto the cushion and stood up to tower over me. "You are always keeping score. You track everything I do, who I see, where I go, how many dishes I wash. It is exhausting. I just asked for help." I had whispered, "It is not about the help. It is about your need for control." He had paced the room, running his hands through his perfect hair. "In my line of work, I need flexibility. I need to be able to move. I need to network. Relationships are the currency of my industry, Haley. When I am out late, I am not partying. I am building our future. I am building this life that you enjoy so much." He had gestured around the kitchen at the Viking range and the imported tile as if he had paid for them himself. We both knew my salary covered the mortgage and the renovation loans, but I had stayed silent. "You need to be cooler than this," he had said, his voice dropping to a disappointed murmur. "I married you because you were independent, because you were not like those other nagging wives who call every 5 minutes. Don't become one of those women, Haley. It is not a good look on you." The cool girl. That was the role I had been cast in. The cool girl did not complain when her husband missed dinner. The cool girl understood that business came first. The cool girl did not ask who was texting him at 11 at night because she was secure and confident. The cool girl was a lie I told myself every single day to keep the peace. I opened my eyes. The kitchen was still empty. The silence was still heavy. I looked at the phone again. There were no missed calls, no texts explaining that a tire had blown out or that the client had dragged him into a long dinner. There was just nothing. I imagined him somewhere in the city. Maybe he was at a steakhouse laughing at a joke I would not find funny. Maybe he was at a bar with his hand on the small of another woman's back. The thought did not make my heart race. It made me feel tired. It was a bone-deep exhaustion that made lifting the wine glass feel like bench-pressing heavy weights. I had spent my 20s building this. I had checked every box. Good degree, high-paying career, handsome husband, dream house. I had thought that if I performed the role of the perfect modern woman well enough, I would be happy. But sitting here alone in my designer dress with my feet throbbing in Italian leather heels, I realized I was just a prop in my own life. I was the supporting actress in the Brett show. I looked at the lobster ravioli again. It looked disgusting. Why was I still sitting here? Why was I waiting? I think a part of me believed that if I waited long enough, he would walk through the door and the script would correct itself. He would have a valid excuse. He would have a diamond necklace in his pocket. He would kiss me and tell me I was the most patient and wonderful wife in the world. And then I could go back to sleep and pretend the cracks in our foundation were just settling noises. But the clock on the microwave changed. The bright green lines shifted. 1159 became 1200. Midnight. The day was over. My 30th birthday had come and gone, and my husband had missed the entire thing. I watched the numbers for a full minute. 1201. I waited for the tears. I had always been a crier. I cried at sad movies. I cried when I was frustrated at work. I cried when I was overtired. I expected to collapse onto the table and sob into the linen runner until my makeup was ruined, but the tears did not come. Instead, I felt a strange, cold sensation spreading from my chest to my fingertips. It was like the anesthesia before a surgery. It was a complete and total numbness. He is not coming. The thought was simple and factual. It was not a question. It was a data point. I stood up. My knees popped slightly from sitting in the same position for 4 hours. I picked up the 2 plates of expensive seafood. I walked to the trash can and scraped the food into the bin. The wet sound of the ravioli hitting the plastic bag was loud in the quiet room. I did not save the leftovers. I did not try to salvage the meal. I walked back to the table and picked up the wine bottle. It was still half full. $100 worth of wine remained in the dark glass. I carried it to the sink. I thought about the day we bought it, the sunlight in Napa, the way Brett had smiled at me when he swiped the credit card. He had looked at me with such intensity that day. I realized now that he was not looking at me with love. He was looking at me with the satisfaction of ownership. He had acquired the wife and the wine and the image he wanted. I tipped the bottle upside down. The deep red wine poured into the stainless steel sink. It swirled around the drain like blood. It splashed against the metal and disappeared into the dark pipes below. I watched every drop fall. I could have corked it. I could have saved it for tomorrow. But I knew there would be no celebration tomorrow. The wine was already exposed to the air. It was already turning. It was spoiling just like everything else in this house. When the bottle was empty, I set it gently in the recycling bin. I looked at my reflection in the dark window above the sink. My lipstick was still perfect. My hair was still curled. I looked like a woman who was ready for a party. I turned off the kitchen lights. The darkness was absolute. I walked up the stairs to the master bedroom alone. I did not check my phone again. I did not send a follow-up text asking if he was okay. I stripped off the dress and the heels and the expensive lingerie I had bought specifically for tonight. I put on an old oversized t-shirt and climbed into the middle of the king-sized bed. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. Somewhere in Austin, my husband was lying to someone. Maybe he was lying to a client. Maybe he was lying to a bartender. Maybe he was lying to a woman. But for the first time in 3 years, he was not lying to me. His absence was the most honest thing he had given me in a long time. I closed my eyes and waited for the sound of the garage door. I knew he would come home eventually. He always came home. He needed his clean shirts and his coffee machine and his audience. But the woman waiting for him in the morning would not be the same woman who had sat at the table tonight. That woman had turned 30 and realized she was alone. I drifted into a restless sleep while the silence of the house continued to press down on me, waiting for the sound of a key in the lock to shatter it. The sun had not yet fully risen when the sound of the front door lock turning sliced through the silent house. It was a sharp metallic click that echoed off the high ceilings and the quartz countertops. I was sitting on the living room sofa with my knees pulled up to my chest. I had not slept. I had spent the last 7 hours moving from the dining table to the couch and staring at the driveway through the sheer curtains. The heavy oak door swung open. Brett walked in. He did not look like a man who had been out partying. He looked like a man who had survived a war. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, and the sleeves were rolled up to his elbows in a messy, erratic way that was unlike him. His hair was disheveled. There were dark circles under his eyes that seemed to have appeared overnight. He stopped in the entryway when he saw me. He did not flinch. He did not look surprised. He just stood there and let out a long exhale that sounded like all the air leaving a tire. I stood up. My legs were stiff. The anger I had been nursing for hours rose up in my throat like bile. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in the dark. I had prepared speeches. I had prepared questions. I was ready to scream and demand to know why my husband had missed my 30th birthday without a single text message. But before I could speak, a wave of scent hit me. It was not the smell of alcohol. It was not the smell of stale bar smoke or grilled steak. It was sandalwood, cedar, leather, papyrus. It was Santal 33. I froze. My own perfume was a classic floral scent from Chanel that cost a small fortune and smelled like a rose garden in Paris. Brett wore a spicy cologne that I bought him every Christmas. This smell was neither of those things. It was trendy. It was sharp. It was the kind of unisex fragrance that cool girls in their early 20s wore when they went to art gallery openings or festivals in the desert. It was a scent that screamed youth and relevance. It was clinging to my husband like a second skin. "Where have you been?" My voice came out lower than I intended. It was not a scream, it was a croak. Brett walked past me into the kitchen. He did not look at me. He went straight to the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of filtered water. He drained half of it in one long gulp while his Adam's apple bobbed up and down. He slammed the bottle down on the island with unnecessary force. He turned to face me. He did not look guilty. He looked furious. This was the look he gave the contractors when they laid the tile wrong. This was the look he gave the waiter when the steak was overcooked. It was a look of righteous indignation. "I expected you to be waiting up," he said. His voice was rough. "You expected me to be waiting up." I repeated the words slowly. "You missed my birthday, Brett. You disappeared for 14 hours. I called you 20 times. I know." He cut me off. He ran a hand over his face and rubbed his eyes aggressively. "I know you called. I saw every single missed call, Haley. I just could not answer." "Why?" "Because I was dealing with a life-or-death situation while you were worrying about a dinner reservation." The words landed like a slap. I blinked. The anger in my chest faltered for a second. Life or death. That was not a phrase Brett used lightly. "What are you talking about?" I asked. He sighed again. It was a sound of profound disappointment. He looked at me like I was a child who had thrown a tantrum in the middle of a funeral. "Kayla called me around 5 yesterday," he said. Kayla. The name hung in the air. I knew Kayla. She was a junior associate at his brokerage firm. She was 24 years old. She had big, wide eyes and a way of looking at Brett like he was the smartest man who had ever lived. I had met her at the company Christmas party. She had complimented my dress and then spent the rest of the night laughing at Brett's jokes and touching his arm. "What about Kayla?" I asked. "Her dad died yesterday afternoon," Brett said. "Massive heart attack, out of nowhere." She was alone in her apartment when she got the news. She called me because she did not know who else to call. She was hysterical, Haley. She was talking about ending it. She was talking about pills. My stomach dropped. The image of the abandoned birthday dinner suddenly felt trivial. A dead father, a suicide threat. These were heavy, real-world tragedies. I went over there to calm her down. He continued. He started pacing the length of the kitchen island. She was hyperventilating. I had to get her breathing again. I had to wait for her sister to drive in from Houston. I could not just leave her there alone. "What did you want me to do, Haley?" He stopped pacing and looked directly at me. His eyes were cold and accusing. "Did you want me to look at a grieving girl who was threatening to harm herself and say sorry, but my wife needs me to cut a cake? Did you want me to leave a human life in danger so we could drink that stupid bottle of wine?" I felt myself shrinking. The righteous anger I had held on to all night began to dissolve into shame. He was right. If that was true, he was right. I was the selfish wife sitting in her ivory tower, worrying about a party while he was out saving a life. I did not know. I whispered. "You could have texted. I was a little busy trying to keep someone from swallowing a bottle of Xanax," he snapped. My phone was on silent because I was focused on the crisis in front of me. "God, Haley, not everything is about you." He shook his head and looked away as if he could not bear the sight of my selfishness. "Is she okay?" I asked. My voice was small. I hated how small it was. I hated that I was suddenly the one apologizing. "She is safe now. Her sister got there an hour ago. I stayed until she fell asleep." He leaned against the counter and crossed his arms. "I am exhausted. I have not slept in 24 hours. I come home hoping for a little support, or maybe a thank you for being a decent human being, and instead I get the 3rd degree." I looked at him. He really did look tired. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was a mess. He looked exactly like a man who had spent the night in a hospital waiting room or a crisis center. And the smell. The Santal 33. Of course she would be wearing it. If he had been holding her while she cried, the scent would have transferred to his clothes. It made sense. It all made sense. I felt a wave of guilt so strong it made me dizzy. I had spent the night assuming the worst. I had judged him. I had poured our anniversary wine down the drain in a fit of pique while he was doing something heroic. This was the dynamic of our marriage. It was a dance we had perfected over 3 years. I would get upset about something. Brett would explain why my feelings were irrational or misplaced. I would feel guilty and apologize. We would move on. He called it being logical. I called it being a supportive partner. I am sorry, I said. The words tasted like ash. I did not know it was that serious. I just thought you blew me off for a client. You always think the worst of me, he said. It is getting old, Haley. You need to work on that insecurity. It is toxic. He pushed off the counter and walked toward the hallway. I need a shower, he said over his shoulder. I feel gross. I need to wash this day off me. Do not wait up. I am going straight to bed after. He disappeared into the master bedroom. I heard the bathroom door close. I heard the water turn on. I stood alone in the kitchen again. The morning light was starting to filter through the blinds. It cast long shadows across the floor. I felt drained. I felt like the villain in my own story. I looked at the island. Brett had left his phone sitting on the marble counter next to the empty water bottle. It was lying face up. The screen was black. I walked over to it. I did not intend to snoop. I had never been the kind of wife who checked phones. I respected his privacy. I trusted him. Even after the disappointment of last night, I still wanted to trust him. But as I reached for the water bottle to throw it in the recycling bin, the phone lit up. It was not a text message. It was not a call. It was a notification from his fitness app, the one synced to the sleek black Apple Watch he wore every single day. I looked down at the screen. The text was crisp and clear against the white background. Congratulations, you closed your exercise ring. I blinked. I read it again. Congratulations, you closed your exercise ring. Below the main text was a smaller line of data. Workout complete, high-intensity interval training. Total time 45 minutes, time 2:15 in the morning. My hand froze in midair. 2:15 in the morning. I stared at the words until they blurred. My brain tried to reject the information. It tried to find a logical explanation that fit the story Brett had just told me. Maybe he had gone for a run to blow off steam after calming Kayla down. Maybe he had paced the room so vigorously that his watch counted it as a workout. But the notification was specific. High-intensity interval training. That meant a sustained, elevated heart rate. That meant sweat. That meant physical exertion that lasted for nearly an hour. At 2:15 in the morning. Nobody does high-intensity cardio at 2 in the morning while watching over a suicidal friend. Nobody closes their exercise ring while sitting on a couch, comforting a grieving woman. The math did not add up. The story did not fit the data. And then, the smell hit me again in my memory. Santal 33. It was not just transferred from a hug. It was steeped into his clothes. It was the smell of a bedroom. It was the smell of intimacy. My heart stopped beating. It physically stopped in my chest for a terrified second, and then restarted with a violent thud that echoed in my ears. High-intensity interval training. My husband had not been saving a life. He had been having sex. He had been having sex with Kayla vigorously enough to register as a 45-minute workout on his watch. And then he had come home and looked me in the eye and used her dead father as a shield. He had used suicide as an excuse. He had called me selfish for wanting to celebrate my birthday while he was cheating on me. The realization washed over me like ice water. It was not a slow dawn of understanding. It was a sudden, brutal clarity. He was lying. He had always been lying. The late nights, the client dinners, the networking events, the constant need for flexibility. It was all a lie. I looked toward the hallway. The sound of the shower was running. He was in there right now, washing the scent of her off his body. He was scrubbing away the sweat from his 2 a.m. workout. He was preparing to come to bed and sleep next to me like nothing had happened. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was Jules the Clueless. He thought he could manipulate me with guilt and shame, and I would just fold like I always did. I looked down at my left hand. The 2-carat diamond sparkled in the morning light. It was heavy. I had always loved how heavy it felt. I thought the weight meant commitment. I thought it meant solidity. Now it just felt like a shackle. I reached for the ring. My fingers were steady. The trembling I had felt earlier was gone. The confusion was gone. I twisted the gold band. It slid over my knuckle easily. I had lost weight in the last few months from stress and trying to be the perfect size for him. I held the ring in my palm for a second. It was warm from my skin. It represented 5 years of my life, 2 years of dating, 3 years of marriage. It represented the house and the image and the future I thought I had secured. I set it down on the cold marble countertop next to his phone. Click. The sound was tiny. It was just metal hitting stone. But in the quiet kitchen, it sounded like a gunshot. It was the sound of a contract breaking. I stared at the ring sitting there. It looked like a foreign object. It did not belong to me anymore. I turned away from the counter. I did not yell. I did not storm into the bathroom and confront him. I did not throw his phone against the wall. I walked past the hallway where the steam was billowing out from the bathroom door. I walked past the entryway where his keys sat. I walked into the guest bedroom downstairs and locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the shower turn off. I heard his heavy footsteps moving around upstairs. I heard the silence settle back over the house. But the silence was different now. It was not pressing down on me anymore. It was waiting. He had made his move. He had played his card. He thought he had won the hand. He had no idea that I had just seen his cards, and he had no idea that the game had just changed completely. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and listened to the sounds of my husband washing away the evidence of his infidelity. The pipes groaned softly in the walls. Above my head, the floorboards creaked as he moved from the shower to the sink. And then I heard it. He was singing. It was a low and tuneless humming that drifted through the vents. He was singing in the shower less than 30 minutes after using a dead man and a suicidal woman as an alibi for his affair. He was singing because he thought he had won. He thought he had successfully navigated the crisis. He thought that I was downstairs drowning in guilt while he scrubbed the scent of Santal 33 from his skin. The audacity of it made the numbness in my limbs evaporate. It was replaced by a cold and focused adrenaline. I stood up. My bare feet made no sound on the hardwood floor as I walked out of the guest room. I moved like a ghost in my own home. I walked past the stairs and into the open living area where his leather work bag was sitting on the console table. He had dropped it there when he walked in. It was a heavy designer briefcase that I had bought him for his promotion last year. I stared at it. For 3 years, I had respected the sanctity of that bag. I had respected the privacy of his work devices. I believed that a marriage required boundaries and trust. But Brett had burned those boundaries to the ground the moment he closed his exercise ring at 2:15 in the morning. I unbuckled the leather flap. My hands were steady. I reached inside and felt the cold aluminum of his company laptop. I pulled it out and set it on the dining table. I opened the lid. The screen came to life with a soft glow. It requested a password. I stared at the blinking cursor. I tried our anniversary first. June 12th. I typed the words, 0612. The screen shook. Incorrect password. I felt a small twist in my gut. Of course it was not our anniversary. That would be too sentimental for the man who was currently singing while I fell apart. I tried my birthday. Yesterday, SS date, 0127. The screen shook again. Incorrect password. I paused. I looked up at the ceiling. The water was still running. I had maybe 10 minutes before he turned it off. I needed to think like him. I needed to think like a narcissist who was living a double life. I closed my eyes and searched my memory. I thought about the way he talked about his team. I thought about the casual stories he told over dinner to make himself sound like a benevolent mentor. I remembered a conversation from 2 months ago. We were drinking coffee, and he was laughing about how young his team was. He had said, "Kayla is practically a baby. She was born in '98. Her birthday is coming up, actually. November 4th. I should probably get the team to sign a card." November 4th. I looked at the keyboard. My fingers hovered over the keys. It seemed too obvious. It seemed too cliché. Surely he would not use his mistress's birthday as the password to his digital life. That would be reckless. That would be arrogant. But Brett was arrogant. He was the kind of man who hid in plain sight because he believed he was smarter than everyone else in the room. I typed the numbers. 1104. I hit enter. The lock screen dissolved. The desktop appeared. A wave of nausea rolled over me so violent that I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from gagging. It was a physical rejection of the truth. He had unlocked his life with her birth date. Every time he logged into work, every time he sent an email, every time he opened this machine, he was typing her birthday. It was a ritual of devotion performed right under my nose. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. I did not have time to be sick. I navigated to the messaging app first. It was synced to his phone. The blue bubbles appeared on the screen like a transcript of his betrayal. I scrolled past the thread with his mother. I scrolled past the thread with his boss. And then I saw it. He had not saved her as Kayla. He had not saved her as work. He had saved her simply as Kay. I clicked on the thread. The messages did not just go back to last night. They did not just go back to the week before. I scrolled up, and the timestamp kept retreating further into the past. 2 years ago. 3 years ago. I saw a message dated 3 years and 2 months ago. It was the date of our wedding. I froze. I remembered that day perfectly. I remembered the white lace of my dress. I remembered the way my father cried when he saw me. I remembered standing at the altar and looking into Brett's eyes and thinking I was the luckiest woman in Austin. I read the text Brett sent at 5:30 in the afternoon on our wedding day. She looks happy. I feel a little bad, honestly, but the open bar is top shelf. I read the reply from Kay. Don't worry, babe. You are just doing what you have to do. I will be waiting up for you tonight. Call me when you can get away. I stared at the words until they blurred. He was texting her while I was dancing with my father. He was texting her while we were cutting the cake. He was texting her while everyone we knew was toasting to our eternal happiness. He had not just cheated on me, he had entered our marriage as a fraud. The entire foundation of our life was a lie. I forced myself to keep scrolling. I needed more. I needed to see the full scope of the humiliation. I saw messages from holidays. I saw messages from when I was sick with the flu, and he told me he had to work late. I miss your skin, he wrote. I hate being here with her, he wrote. She is so boring compared to you. I felt a cold tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. Boring. He called me boring because I was stable. He called me boring because I paid the bills and managed the household and made sure his life ran perfectly. I closed the messaging app. I could not look at it anymore. I had seen enough to know that my marriage was a corpse. I opened the Finder window. I started clicking through his folders, documents, downloads, real estate listings. And then I saw a folder labeled Project Austin. It sounded legitimate. It sounded like a development deal or a new commercial zoning project. But something about it felt wrong. It was hidden inside a folder called Archived Tax Returns. Why would a current project be inside an archive? I double-clicked the folder. It was not spreadsheets. It was not blueprints. It was photographs. Hundreds of them. I opened the first one. It was a selfie of Brett and Kayla on a boat. The water was turquoise behind them. They were wearing sunglasses and holding cocktails. I checked the date, July 14th of last year. I remembered that week. Brett had told me he had to go to a sales conference in Cabo San Lucas. He said it was mandatory for all senior brokers. He had complained about it for days. He said he would miss me. He said he would call me every night. He had called me every night. He had called me from the hotel balcony while Kayla was probably in the shower. I clicked through the photos. There they were at a vineyard in Napa. I remembered that trip too. He said he was scouting locations for a client who wanted to buy a winery. There they were at a ski resort in Aspen. He said he was closing a deal with a tech billionaire. There they were in our house. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at a photo of Kayla sitting on my kitchen counter. She was wearing one of Brett's dress shirts and nothing else. She was holding a mug of coffee. My mug. The ceramic mug I had bought in pottery class. The photo was dated 6 months ago. The timestamp was 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. I was at work. I was sitting in my office running numbers for a merger while my husband brought his mistress into our home. He let her sit on my counters. He let her drink from my cups. He let her invade the one space that was supposed to be mine. This was not just an affair. This was a systematic dismantling of my reality. He was not just cheating. He was laughing at me. He was documenting his deception like it was a trophy. I felt a rage so pure and hot that it frightened me. I wanted to burn the house down. I wanted to scream until the windows shattered. But then I saw something else. It was a screenshot inside the folder. It was an image of a receipt from a jewelry store. I opened it. It was a receipt for a diamond solitaire necklace. The price was $850. The date was exactly 4 weeks ago. I stared at the number. $850. A memory flashed in my brain. 4 weeks ago, Brett had come home looking stressed. He told me his credit card had been compromised. He said there was a fraudulent charge for $850. He said the bank was investigating, but they had frozen his account. He said he was short on cash for the week and worried about his credit score. I had been so understanding. I had been so helpful. "Do not worry, babe," I had said. "I just got my quarterly performance bonus. I will transfer the money to cover it so you do not get hit with a late fee or interest while they sort it out." I had transferred $1,000 to his account that night. I had kissed him and told him everything would be fine. I looked at the next image in the folder. It was a photo of Kayla wearing the necklace. It was a delicate diamond on a gold chain. It rested in the hollow of her throat. Below the photo was a screenshot of a text message she had sent him. "Thanks, Daddy. I love it. It sparkles so much." I felt the room spin. I grabbed the edge of the table. I had paid for it. I had paid for the necklace. I had gone to work early. I had stayed late. I had dealt with difficult clients and impossible deadlines to earn that bonus. I had sacrificed my sleep and my sanity to be a top performer. And I had taken that money and handed it to my husband so he could buy jewelry for the woman he was sleeping with. He had stolen from me. It was not just emotional betrayal. It was theft. He had looked me in the eye and lied about fraud while committing fraud against his own wife. I felt a physical pain in my chest. It was the death of the last shred of respect I had for him. I could almost understand the sex. Men were weak. Men were stupid. But the financial abuse, the calculated extraction of my resources to fund his double life, that was evil. That was the action of a parasite. I looked at the ceiling again. The water had stopped running. I heard the heavy thud of his footsteps on the bath mat. Panic surged through me. I had to move. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I opened the AirDrop menu on his laptop. I selected all the photos in the Project Austin folder. I selected the screenshots of the messages. I selected the receipt for the necklace. I hit send. My phone buzzed silently in my hand. Receiving. I watched the blue circle fill up. It seemed to take forever. 50%. I heard the bathroom door open upstairs. 70%. I heard him whistling again. He was walking toward the closet. 90%. I heard him open the bedroom door. He was coming out into the hallway. Sent. I closed the laptop lid. I shoved it back into his leather bag. I buckled the flap. My hands were shaking so hard I almost missed the clasp. I stepped back from the table. I took a deep breath. I looked at the bag sitting there innocently. It looked exactly as it had 5 minutes ago. But everything had changed. It was no longer just a work bag. It was a crime scene. And I had just secured the evidence. I heard Brett S. footsteps on the stairs. He was coming down. "Haley!" he called out. His voice was cheerful. It was the voice of a man who had gotten away with murder. "Are you down there? I am making coffee. Do you want a cup?" I stood in the middle of the living room. I felt the weight of my phone in my pocket. It felt like a weapon. I looked at the stairs. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. But I did neither. I smoothed my hair. I straightened my spine. I put on the mask that I had worn for 3 years. The mask of the cool girl. The mask of the supportive wife. But the eyes behind the mask were different now. They were cold. They were calculating. "I am in the kitchen," I called back. My voice was steady. It did not waver. I walked toward the kitchen to meet my husband. He thought he was walking into a room with a broken woman who he could manipulate back into submission. He was wrong. He was walking into a room with a woman who had the receipts, and she was going to make him pay for every single one of them. The phone in my pocket felt heavy. It was a dense brick of metal and glass that now contained the nuclear codes to destroy my entire life. A minute ago, I had been shaking. My hands had trembled as I navigated the file menus on Brett S. laptop. My breath had come in short, shallow gasps, like a woman on the verge of a panic attack. I had felt a primal urge to pick up the expensive computer and smash it against the quartz countertop until the screen shattered into 1,000 pieces. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run up the stairs and throw his clothes out the window. I wanted to behave exactly like the hysterical, dramatic woman he had accused me of being. But as I stood there in the kitchen, listening to his footsteps descending the stairs, a different part of my brain took over. It was the part of me that had survived 7 years in the cutthroat world of management consulting. It was the part of me that knew how to walk into a boardroom full of hostile executives and deliver bad news without blinking. It was the cold, analytical voice that whispered one single directive: emotion is a liability. Data is power. If I screamed now, I would lose. If I confronted him with tears in my eyes and a shaky voice, he would spin it. He would call me crazy. He would say I misunderstood the photos. He would say the texts were out of context. He would say I was invading his privacy and use that to paint himself as the victim. He would gaslight me until I doubted my own name. I could not give him that opening. I needed to be smarter. I needed to be cold. I had the data. I had the receipts. I had the photos of the necklace and the texts calling me boring and the timestamps of his betrayal on our wedding day. I had the ammunition. Now I needed to choose the right moment to pull the trigger. I looked at the marble countertop. My wedding ring was still sitting there where I had left it. It was a circle of gold and diamond that caught the morning light. If he saw it sitting there, he would know. He would know that the contract was broken. He would know that I knew. I reached out. My hand was steady now. The trembling had stopped completely. I picked up the ring. The metal was cold against my skin. I slid it back onto my fourth finger. It felt tight. It felt like a shackle. It felt like putting on a costume. I took a deep breath. I smoothed the front of my oversized t-shirt. I relaxed the muscles in my jaw. I was about to give the performance of a lifetime. Brett walked into the kitchen. He was wearing nothing but a white towel wrapped low around his waist. His chest was bare and still damp from the shower. Water droplets clung to his shoulders. His hair was wet and pushed back from his forehead. He looked healthy. He looked vibrant. He looked like a man who had just had a great workout and a refreshing shower. He did not look like a husband who had betrayed his wife for 3 years. He walked straight to the coffee maker. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who owns the room. He pulled a mug from the cabinet. It was a mug that said, "Best husband ever." I had bought it for him 2 Christmases ago. He pressed the button on the machine. The grinder whirred to life. It was a loud, aggressive sound that filled the silence between us. He turned to look at me while the coffee brewed. He leaned against the counter and crossed his arms over his chest. He offered me a small, tentative smile. It was the smile he used when he wanted to be charming. It was the smile that had convinced me to marry him. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," I replied. My voice was neutral. It was flat. He sighed and ran a hand through his wet hair. He looked down at the floor and then back up at me with big, earnest eyes. "Are you still mad?" he asked. He paused for a second to let the question hang in the air. He was gauging my reaction. He was testing the waters. "I am sorry for raising my voice earlier," he continued. His tone was smooth and apologetic. "I was just too stressed, Haley. You have no idea what it was like over there. Seeing her like that, dealing with the police and the family. It was traumatic. I came home and I was just drained. I should not have snapped at you." I watched him speak. I watched the way his lips moved. I watched the way he tilted his head to the side to look vulnerable. It was a masterclass in manipulation. He was using the fake suicide story again. He was doubling down on the lie. He was banking on my empathy. He was counting on the fact that I was a good person who would feel guilty for adding to his stress. Inside my chest, a fire was raging. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to shout that I knew about the cardio workout at 2 a.m. I wanted to ask him if the stress relief he found in her bed was worth destroying our marriage. But I forced the fire down. I packed it into a tight ball in the pit of my stomach. I looked at him, and I smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was not a warm smile. It was a mechanical lifting of the corners of my mouth. It was a smile that did not reach my eyes. But to a narcissist like Brett, who only saw what he wanted to see, it probably looked like submission. "I understand," I said. The words tasted like poison. "You are right," I continued. My voice was soft. I forced myself to sound small. I forced myself to sound like the insecure wife he believed I was. I was making it about me. "I should have realized what you were going through. I was just disappointed about the birthday dinner, and I let my emotions get the best of me." I saw the tension leave his shoulders. He relaxed visibly. His chest expanded. He took a sip of his coffee and looked at me with a mixture of relief and condescension. "It is okay," he said magnanimously. He was forgiving me. He was granting me absolution for a sin I had not committed. "I know how much birthdays mean to you. We will make it up, I promise." He set the mug down and took a step toward me. My instinct was to recoil. My body wanted to run. Every nerve ending in my skin was screaming danger. But I stayed planted. I kept my feet glued to the hardwood floor. He reached out and wrapped his arms around me. His skin was warm. He smelled of soap and peppermint toothpaste. But underneath the clean scents, I could still imagine the phantom smell of Santal, 33. I could smell the betrayal. He pulled me close. My face pressed against his bare chest. I could hear his heart beating. It was a steady, rhythmic thump. Thump, 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 thump. It was the heartbeat of a liar. He kissed the top of my head. Then he tilted my chin up and kissed my forehead. His lips were soft. The gesture was meant to be tender. It was meant to be reassuring. It was the kind of kiss a parent gives a child after a scolding. "I love you, Haley," he whispered. "You know that, right? I do everything for us." I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to hold my breath. Us. There was no us. There was him, and there was me, and there was the money I made that he stole to spend on her. "I love you too." I lied. It was the first time I had ever lied to him about my feelings. It felt incredibly powerful. He pulled back and looked at me. He smiled again. He looked satisfied. He had managed the situation. He had put the annoying wife back in her box. He had smoothed over the cracks. "I'm going to grab a few hours of sleep," he said. "I am wiped out." He grabbed his coffee mug and turned toward the stairs. "You should rest too," he added over his shoulder. "You look tired." I watched him walk away. I watched his back muscles move as he climbed the stairs. I watched him disappear into the master bedroom. I heard the door close. I was alone in the kitchen. I let out the breath I had been holding. It came out as a shuddering gasp. My legs finally gave out and I sank onto one of the bar stools. I wrapped my arms around myself. I felt dirty. I felt contaminated by his touch. I wanted to scrub my skin with bleach. I wanted to peel off the layer of flesh that he had kissed, but I did not have time for a breakdown. I looked at the clock on the microwave. It was 8:15 in the morning. He would sleep for at least 4 hours. He was arrogant enough to believe he was safe. He would not wake up until noon. 4 hours. I had 4 hours to secure my future. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I unlocked it and opened the photo gallery. I checked the folder I had created. Project Austin. It was all there. The photos, the screenshots, the receipts. I needed to back it up. I needed to put it somewhere he could never reach. I opened my cloud storage app. I created a hidden vault protected by a new password. I uploaded everything. I watched the progress bar again. When it hit 100%, I felt a tiny fraction of the weight lift off my shoulders. The data was safe. Now I needed a weapon. I needed a lawyer. I did not need a mediator. I did not need a family friend who would talk about reconciliation. I did not need someone who would suggest marriage counseling. I needed a shark. I needed someone who understood that this was not a heartbreak. This was a war. I opened the browser on my phone. I typed in the search bar. Best divorce attorney, Austin High, net worth, assets, infidelity. A list of names popped up. I scanned them. I looked for reviews. I looked for words like aggressive and ruthless and shark. One name kept appearing. Sloane Harper. I clicked on her website. The page was stark black and white. There were no pictures of happy families holding hands. There were no soft pastels. There was just a photo of a woman with sharp silver hair and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. The tagline beneath her name read, "Protecting your future when your present falls apart." I read her bio. 20 years of experience, specializing in complex asset division and forensic accounting. Known for her lack of patience with nonsense. She was perfect. I looked at the contact number. It was a local office. I glanced at the ceiling. The house was silent. Brett was asleep. I stood up and walked to the back patio. I slid the glass door open and stepped out into the morning heat. The air was thick and humid. The cicadas were already buzzing in the trees. I walked to the far corner of the yard near the fence where I knew he could not hear me even if he woke up. I dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Law Office of Sloane Harper. A receptionist answered. Her voice was crisp. "I need to schedule an urgent consultation," I said. My voice was steady. It sounded like my work voice. It sounded like the voice of a woman who is managing a crisis for a client. "I can check her schedule," the receptionist said. "What is the nature of your inquiry?" "I am filing for divorce," I said. The words felt strange in my mouth. I had never said them out loud before. "I have significant assets," I continued, "and I have evidence of infidelity and financial fraud." There was a pause on the other end of the line. The word fraud changed the tone of the conversation. "Can you come in at 11 this morning?" the receptionist asked. "Sloane has a lunch opening she can move." I looked at my watch. 11 o'clock. That gave me 3 hours. "I will be there," I said. I hung up the phone. I looked back at the house. It was a beautiful house. It was a mansion made of stone and glass. It was the symbol of everything I had worked for. And inside that beautiful house, my husband was sleeping peacefully, dreaming of his mistress, and believing that he had fooled me one last time. He was wrong. I was not the clueless wife anymore. I was not the victim. I was the plaintiff, and I was about to sue him for everything he had. The office of Sloane Harper smelled like expensive leather and intimidation. It was located on the top floor of a glass tower downtown. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows looked down on the Colorado River and the sprawling city of Austin. It was a view that said, "I am at the top of the food chain." Sloane sat behind a desk that looked like a slab of black obsidian. She was 50 years old with hair the color of steel and eyes that were even colder. She was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first car. She did not offer me coffee. She did not offer me a tissue. She simply held out her hand for the flash drive I had brought. I watched her plug it into her laptop. I watched her click through the folder I had named Project Austin. I watched her face remain perfectly still as she looked at the photos of my husband vacationing with his mistress. She looked at the screenshots of the text messages where he called me boring. She looked at the receipt for the diamond necklace I had unknowingly paid for. She did not gasp. She did not shake her head in sympathy. She just nodded once, a sharp, efficient movement. "This is good," she said. Her voice was like gravel wrapped in velvet. "This is very good." She leaned back in her chair and looked at me. "Most women come in here with a hunch," she said. "They have a vague feeling. They have a suspicious credit card charge. You walked in here with a smoking gun. You have forensic evidence of infidelity and financial fraud." I sat up straighter. I felt a flicker of pride. Even in the midst of my life falling apart, I wanted to be the best student in the class. "I want a divorce," I said. "And I want him out of my house." Sloane held up a hand. Her fingernails were painted a deep blood red. "Stop right there," she said. I blinked. "What?" "You want him out of the house," she repeated. "That is a natural instinct. You are hurt. You are angry. You want to purge the contamination from your sanctuary. But if you pack a bag and go to a hotel tonight, you are making a tactical error that could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars." I frowned. "The house is in my name. I paid the down payment." "Exactly," she said. "But Texas is a community property state. If you leave the marital home before a temporary order is in place, it can be argued as abandonment. It weakens your position. It gives him leverage to claim he is the primary resident. Possession is 9/10 of the law, Haley. If you leave, you are handing him the keys to the castle. So what do? I asked. "I cannot sleep in the same bed as him." "Then do not sleep in the same bed," Sloane said. "Move into the guest room. Put a lock on the door, but do not leave that property. You stay there. You occupy that space. You make sure he knows that it is your territory." She leaned forward, her eyes locked onto mine. "He is a narcissist," she said. It was not a question. It was a diagnosis. "Yes," I whispered. "He will try to drive you out." She continued. "He will try to make you uncomfortable. He will try to make you feel unsafe so that you flee. He wants you to be the one who breaks the lease on the marriage. Do not give him that satisfaction." She pushed a retainer agreement across the black desk. "You go home. You tell him you are filing. You serve him the papers. And then you stay put. You become a statue. You become a wall that he cannot move. Let him have his tantrums. Let him play his games. You just document everything." She handed me a pen. It was heavy and expensive. "Make his life hell, Haley," she said. "But do it with a smile. And do it from the comfort of your own living room." I signed the paper. I drove home with a new sense of purpose. The dread that had been sitting in my stomach was replaced by cold determination. I was not a victim anymore. I was a client of Sloane Harper. When I walked into the house, it was 6 p.m. Brett was sitting on the couch watching ESPN. He had a beer in his hand. He looked relaxed. He looked like a man who thought he had successfully managed his wife. He looked up as I entered. "Hey, babe," he said. His voice was casual. "Did you have a good day?" I walked over to the television. I picked up the remote control and pressed the power button. The screen went black. The room went silent. "Hey," he protested. "I was watching that." I turned to face him. I did not scream. I did not cry. I channeled Sloane Harper. "I hired a divorce attorney today," I said. Brett laughed. It was a short barking sound. He took a sip of his beer and shook his head. "Okay, Haley," he said. "You are still on this. Look, I know you are upset about the birthday thing. I told you we would make it up. Do not be dramatic." "I am not being dramatic," I said. "I am being litigious." I pulled the manila envelope out of my bag. It contained the initial petition for divorce. I tossed it onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud next to his feet. "I am filing on the grounds of adultery and cruel treatment," I said. "I am asking for the house. I am asking for reimbursement of marital funds used on your mistress, and I am asking for you to vacate the premises once the court orders it." Brett stared at the envelope. He did not pick it up. He looked at me with a mixture of amusement and pity. "You are bluffing," he said. "You are not going to divorce me. We have a life, Haley. We have an image. You care too much about what people think to be a divorce at 30. I looked at him. He really believed that. He believed I was trapped by my own perfectionism. "Read the papers, Brett," I said. "Or do not. It does not matter to me. But I am moving into the guest room. Do not come in there. Do not speak to me unless it is about the logistics of the house." I turned and walked toward the stairs. "Haley," he called after me. His voice had lost its amusement. It was harder now. "If you think I am signing anything, you are out of your mind. I am not leaving this house. I live here too." I stopped on the bottom step. I looked back at him. "I know," I said. "That is the unfortunate part, but I can wait." I went into the guest room and locked the door. I heard him pacing in the living room for an hour. I heard him make a phone call. His voice was low and angry. I knew he was calling Kayla. I knew he was telling her that his crazy wife was having a breakdown. Let him talk. I had the receipts. The next 3 days were a study in psychological warfare. We were living in the same 4,000 square feet, but we were existing in different realities. I was living in a legal proceeding. He was living in a frat house. He realized quickly that I was not leaving. He realized that his charm offensive was not working. So he switched tactics. If he could not charm me, he would disgust me. He would make the environment so toxic that I would be forced to flee. It started on Sunday. Sunday was usually our quiet day. We would meal prep for the week. We would read. We would keep the house pristine for the week ahead. At noon, the doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen making tea. I watched as 3 of Brett's loudest friends walked in. They were carrying 12 packs of cheap beer and boxes of pizza. They were men in their 30s who still acted like they were 20. They wore backwards baseball caps and jerseys. Brett greeted them with high fives and loud shouts. "Game day, boys," he yelled. They took over the living room. They turned the volume on the television up to the maximum level. The bass from the speakers shook the floorboards. They opened beers and threw the caps on the floor. They ate pizza and wiped their greasy hands on my throw pillows. I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched. Brett looked at me. He smirked. He raised his beer in a mock toast. "Problem," he mouthed. He wanted me to snap. He wanted me to come in there and start screaming about the mess. He wanted me to be the nagging shrew so he could roll his eyes at his friends and say, "See what I have to deal with." I did not give him the satisfaction. I took my tea and went to the guest room. I put on noise-canceling headphones. I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet. I documented the date. I documented the time. I documented the behavior, harassment tactics. I typed, "Intentional disruption of domestic environment." I stayed in my room for 6 hours. When I finally came out after they left, the living room was a disaster zone. There were empty cans everywhere. There was a slice of pepperoni stuck to the rug. The air smelled like stale hops and body odor. Brett was sitting amidst the wreckage. He looked at me expectantly. He was waiting for me to start cleaning. He was waiting for me to pick up after him like I always did. I walked past the mess. I walked into the kitchen and made myself a salad. I ate it standing up. Then I went back to my room. I left the mess exactly where it was. The next morning he was furious. He banged on my door at 7. "Are you seriously not going to clean up the living room?" he shouted. "We have a housekeeper coming on Tuesday. She cannot clean if there is trash everywhere." "Then you better pick it up," I said through the door. He kicked the door. It was a solid thud. "You are being a child, Haley," he yelled. I smiled. I opened my phone and took a photo of the door where his foot had left a scuff mark. Evidence. On Tuesday, I had a critical presentation. It was a Zoom call with the board of directors for a major healthcare client. I had set up my laptop in the home office. I had put on a blazer. I had checked my lighting. 5 minutes before the call started, the music began. It was heavy metal. It was aggressive and loud, and it was coming from the master bedroom directly above the office. Thump, thump, thump. The ceiling vibrated. I texted Brett. "I have a client meeting. Please turn it down." He read the text immediately. The volume went up. My heart rate spiked. This was my career. This was the one thing he could not touch. I had 2 choices. I could run upstairs and bang on his door and risk missing the start of the meeting, or I could adapt. I grabbed my laptop. I grabbed my ring light. I ran to the guest room, which was on the opposite side of the house. I set up on the small desk in the corner. I put on my headset. I logged into the meeting with 30 seconds to spare. "Good morning, Haley," the CEO said. "You look focused today." "I am ready to dive in," I said. My voice was calm. Above me, I could faintly hear the screaming vocals of the music, but my headset filtered it out. Brett was upstairs thinking he would sabotage my career. He was thinking I was panicking. I delivered the presentation flawlessly. When I finished, I logged off and sat in the silence of the guest room. I felt a cold sweat on my back. He was escalating. He was trying to break me. But the final straw came on Wednesday evening. I was in the kitchen making dinner. I was boiling pasta. I was trying to ignore the fact that the living room still smelled like beer because he refused to clean it. Brett walked into the kitchen. He was holding his phone in front of his face. He was on a video call. He leaned against the counter right next to where I was chopping vegetables. He was not wearing headphones. He had the volume on speaker. "Hey, baby." A female voice chirped from the phone. It was her. It was Kayla. My knife froze in midair. "Hey, beautiful," Brett said. He looked directly at me while he spoke to her. He was staring into my eyes with a challenge. "How are you holding up?" "I am better now that I am seeing you," she said. Her voice was breathy and young. It sounded like a caricature of a sexy woman. "I miss you so much. The apartment is so lonely without you." "I miss you too," Brett said. He reached out and grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl. He took a loud, crunching bite. "I wish I was there. It is pretty tense here. The roommate is being difficult." The roommate. He called me the roommate, in my own house, in the kitchen I paid for. "Oh, poor baby," Kayla cooed. "Just ignore her. She is just jealous because she knows what she lost." I gripped the handle of the knife. My knuckles turned white. The disrespect was so visceral, it felt like a physical blow. He was bringing her into our home digitally. He was letting her voice contaminate the air I breathed. I looked at him. He was smirking. He was enjoying this. He wanted me to explode. He wanted me to snatch the phone and scream at her so he could tell her, "See, I told you she was crazy." I took a deep breath. I put the knife down. I turned off the stove. The water stopped boiling. I looked at Brett. I looked at the phone. I leaned in close to the microphone. I spoke clearly and calmly. "Hello, Kayla," I said. I saw Brett's eyes widen. He had not expected me to join the conversation. On the screen, I saw a flash of blonde hair and wide, fearful eyes before Brett jerked the phone away. "I just wanted to let you know that the diamond necklace looks beautiful in the photos." I continued, "I hope you enjoy it. I paid for it after all. Oh, and you might want to tell your boyfriend that using marital assets to fund an affair is a Class A felony in this state when it crosses a certain threshold. We are currently at $12,000 and counting." Brett scrambled to hit the mute button. His face had turned a bright shade of red. "You are crazy," he hissed. I smiled. "Have a good night," I said. I picked up my bowl of half-cooked pasta and walked out of the kitchen. I heard him whispering furiously into the phone. I heard him apologizing to her. I heard him trying to do damage control. I went to my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and opened my laptop. I pulled up the spreadsheet. Date: Wednesday. Time: 7:15 p.m. Incident: hostile environment. Introduction of third party via speakerphone. Verbal abuse. I typed it all out. He thought he was winning because he was making me uncomfortable. He thought he was winning because he was being loud and messy and cruel. But he was playing checkers. I was playing chess. Every time he turned up the music, he was giving me ammunition. Every time he brought his friends over to trash the house, he was proving he had no respect for the property. Every time he put Kayla on speakerphone, he was documenting his own cruelty. Sloan was going to love this. I looked around the small guest room. It was cramped. The bed was too soft. The lighting was bad. It was a prison cell compared to the master suite upstairs. But it was my bunker. And I was not leaving. I lay down and listened to the murmuring of his voice downstairs. He was probably telling her that I was a monster. He was probably promising her that I would be gone soon. He had no idea. I was just getting started. I was going to document every single breath he took until I had enough paper to bury him. I closed my eyes and let the anger settle into a cold, hard knot in my chest. "Stay put," Sloan had said. I was staying put, and I was going to watch him burn his own life down from the front row. The concept of financial strangulation sounds violent. It sounds like a physical act of aggression. But as I sat in my home office the morning after my visit to Sloan Harper, I realized it was actually a very quiet process. It was the click of a mouse. It was the tap of a keyboard. It was the silent severance of the invisible lifelines that I had been feeding my husband for 3 years. Sloan had been very clear. "You are the primary earner, Haley," she had said. "You bring in 70% of the household income. You pay the mortgage. You pay the utilities. You pay for the groceries. You pay the credit card bills. You have created a cushioned ecosystem where he gets to play the big shot real estate broker without ever feeling the financial pressure of his lifestyle. It is time to pop the bubble." I looked at my spreadsheet. Brett made good money when he closed a deal, but real estate was feast or famine. For the last 6 months, it had been mostly famine. He had closed one major deal in February. The commission check was fat. He had immediately leased a new luxury sedan and bought 3 custom suits. Since then, I had been carrying us. I looked at the joint credit card statement. It was a Platinum American Express that was technically in my name with him as an authorized user. I had added him 2 weeks after we got married because he said it made sense for building points. I scrolled through the charges. Lunch at the Capitol Grill, $240. Dinner at Uchi, $300. Gas station, $60. Liquor store, $150. He lived like a king. He lived like a man who had an endless supply of capital. I picked up the phone. I dialed the number on the back of my card. I navigated through the automated menu. I entered my Social Security number. I waited for a representative. "Hello, this is Sarah. How can I help you today?" "Hi, Sarah," I said. My voice was calm. "I need to remove an authorized user from my account." "Certainly. What is the name on the card?" "Brett Harrison." "Okay, I can process that for you. Just so you know, this will immediately deactivate his physical card. If he tries to use it, the transaction will be declined." I smiled. It was a small, cold smile. "That is fine," I said. "Proceed." I heard the typing on the other end. "Okay, Brett Harrison has been removed. Is there anything else?" "No, thank you." I hung up. It was done. The plastic rectangle in his wallet was now just a piece of scrap metal. He was walking around Austin with a dud in his pocket. I moved to the next item on my list. Utilities. I logged into our internet provider account. I went to the settings. I found the Wi-Fi password field. For 3 years, it had been Harrison Home 2020. I deleted it. I typed in a new password. "Get a job, Brett." I saved the changes. Instantly, my laptop disconnected. I reconnected using the new password. I watched the bars turn solid again. Downstairs in the living room, the smart TV would be disconnecting right now. His gaming console would be offline. His iPad would be searching for a signal that no longer welcomed him. Next was the cable. Brett was obsessed with sports. He had the premium package. It included every NFL game and every NBA game, and channels that showed sports from countries I had never visited. It cost us $250 a month. I called the provider. "I would like to downgrade my service," I said. "How far do you want to go?" the agent asked. "Basic," I said. "Local channels only. No sports packages. No premium movie channels. Just the news and the weather." "Are you sure?" the agent asked. "You will be losing access to over 300 channels." "I am sure," I said. Click. The digital walls were closing in. Finally, I went downstairs to the kitchen. This was the pettiest part. This was the part that Sloane had warned me might cause the biggest explosion. "Food is primal," she had said. "When you take away a man's food, you are attacking his survival instinct. Be prepared." I opened the refrigerator. It was stocked with the things Brett liked: craft beer, fancy deli meats, expensive yogurts, organic berries. I grabbed a trash bag. I did not throw the food away. That would be wasteful. I packed the non-perishable items into a box. I took the perishable items that I did not eat and put them in a cooler. I drove to the local food bank and donated everything. Then I went to the grocery store. I bought exactly what I needed for myself. I bought spinach. I bought grilled chicken breast. I bought 1 bottle of white wine. I bought almond milk. I came home and unpacked. The refrigerator looked barren. It was a cavern of white plastic shelves. I took a roll of blue painter tape and a black permanent marker. I put a piece of tape on the milk. I wrote Haley on it. I put a piece of tape on the chicken. I wrote Haley. I put a piece of tape on the wine. I wrote Haley. I stepped back and looked at my work. It was aggressive. It was territorial. It was a declaration that the communal pot was closed. I went back to the guest room and waited. It did not take long for the first sign of distress. At 2 p.m, I received a text from Brett. "Is the internet down? I cannot connect to the server." I read the message. I did not reply. 10 minutes later, another text. "Seriously, Haley, did you change the password? I have a Zoom call in 20 minutes. This is childish." I ignored it. Let him use his cellular data. Let him use a hotspot. Let him figure it out. But the real explosion came at 6:30 in the evening. I heard the front door slam so hard the windows rattled in their frames. "Haley!" His voice was a roar. It was not the smooth, charming voice of the real estate broker. It was the guttural scream of a wounded animal. I was sitting at the kitchen island. I was drinking a cup of chamomile tea. I was wearing my silk pajamas and a robe. I looked like the picture of relaxation. Brett stormed into the kitchen. His face was a color I had never seen before. It was a deep, mottled purple. His veins were bulging in his neck. He looked sweaty and disheveled. "You humiliated me!" he screamed. He threw his wallet onto the counter. It slid across the marble and stopped near my teacup. I took a sip of tea. I blew on the steam gently. "Hello, Brett," I said. "How was your day?" "How was my day?" he shouted. He was pacing back and forth now, waving his arms. "I was at lunch with the vice president of commercial lending. We were at Perrier Steakhouse. I was trying to network. I was trying to build a relationship that could get me financing for future deals. He stopped and leaned over the counter, getting right in my face. The bill came, $200. I put my card down. The waiter came back 5 minutes later. He said it was declined Haley, in front of the vice president. I looked at him calmly. "That is unfortunate," I said. "Unfortunate," he sputtered. "It was catastrophic. I had to call the bank right there at the table. They told me the primary account holder had removed me. They told me the card was dead." He slammed his hand on the counter. "I had to ask the client to pay. Do you have any idea how that looks? Do you have any idea how unprofessional that is? I looked like a broke loser who cannot afford a lunch. You destroyed my credibility." I set my teacup down. "I did not destroy your credibility, Brett," I said. "You destroyed your own credibility when you spent $12,000 of our money on jewelry and hotels for your girlfriend." He froze. I stood up and walked to the refrigerator. I opened the door. He watched me. He looked confused. I pointed to the empty shelves. "By the way," I said, "I am no longer subsidizing your lifestyle. The grocery budget is closed. The internet is for paying residents only. The cable package has been canceled." He stared at the blue tape on my almond milk. He stared at the name Haley written in sharp black letters. "You are insane," he whispered. "You are actually insane. You cannot do this. This is financial abuse." I laughed. It was a genuine laugh. "Financial abuse," I repeated. "That is rich coming from the man who stole my bonus check." I closed the refrigerator door. I turned to face him. I leaned against the counter and crossed my arms. "This is not abuse, Brett. This is reality. You wanted to live a separate life. You wanted to have a girlfriend and secrets in a private world. I am just giving you exactly what you wanted. Autonomy." He looked around the kitchen. He looked at the empty fridge. He looked at his dead wallet. "But I have no cash flow right now," he said. His voice cracked. It lost the anger and replaced it with panic. "I have not closed a deal in 3 months. I have car payments. I have insurance. I need to eat." I picked up my tea again. I took a slow, deliberate sip. "You are a resourceful man," I said. "You are a top producer. You are the networking king. I am sure you will figure it out." I started to walk away. "Where are you going?" he asked. He sounded desperate. "There is no food here. What am I supposed to eat?" I stopped at the doorway. I turned back one last time. I looked him up and down. I looked at his expensive suit that I had paid for. I looked at his haircut that I had paid for. "Why do you not go over to Kayla's apartment?" I suggested. His face went pale. "She is a very supportive partner, right?" I continued. "I am sure she would be delighted to cook for you. Maybe you can sell that diamond necklace to buy some groceries." I saw the fear in his eyes then. It was the first time I had ever seen it. For 3 years he had looked at me with arrogance. He had looked at me with condescension. He had looked at me like I was a resource to be mined. Now he was looking at me like I was the person holding the oxygen tank, and I had just turned the valve off. He realized in that moment that he was not the king of the castle. He was a dependent. He was a parasite who had forgotten who the host was. I did not wait for his response. I walked to the guest room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and listened. I expected him to scream again. I expected him to throw things, but there was only silence. He was standing in the dark kitchen staring at an empty fridge and a dead credit card and realizing that the free ride was over. My stomach rumbled. I was hungry. I had a container of grilled chicken with my name on it in the fridge, but I decided to wait. I wanted to let the hunger sit with him for a while. I opened my laptop and logged into the bank account again. I checked the status of the joint checking account. I had transferred 90% of the balance to my personal savings account that morning, leaving just enough to cover the mortgage payment that was auto-drafted. He had access to about $50. I smiled. "Welcome to the real world, Brett." I pulled up the spreadsheet again. Date: Thursday. Incident: financial separation initiated. Subject reaction: hostile, then fearful. Note: subject attempted to use credit card for business lunch and was declined. I typed it all out. Sloan was right. It felt violent. It felt aggressive. But it also felt like justice. He had spent 3 years treating our marriage like an expense account. He had treated my labor like a renewable resource. Now he was going to learn the value of $1. I put on my noise-canceling headphones. I turned on a podcast about forensic accounting. I lay back on the pillows and closed my eyes. For the first time in a week, I felt safe. I controlled the money. I controlled the food. I controlled the environment. He was just a guest in my house now, and guests who behaved badly did not get fed. I drifted off to sleep, imagining him eating a stale protein bar from the pantry for dinner while wondering how he was going to put gas in his luxury car tomorrow morning. It was the sweetest dream I had ever had. The audacity of a narcissist is a breathtaking thing to witness. It is a force of nature, like a hurricane or a landslide. It defies logic, and it defies shame. I was sitting in the guest room on a Saturday morning when my phone chimed with a notification. It was an invitation to a group chat named Summer BBQ. I stared at the screen. There were 30 people in the chat. They were our mutual friends. They were his cousins. They were my college roommates. They were the people who had danced at our wedding 4 years ago. The first message was from Brett. "Hey everyone, we are hosting a little get-together at my parents' house this afternoon to celebrate our 4th anniversary. I know things have been a little rocky lately, but Haley and I are working through it. We would love to see you all there for some burgers and beers." I felt the blood drain from my face. Our 4th anniversary. He was throwing an anniversary party. We were living in separate bedrooms. I had cut off his credit cards. I had filed for divorce. I had evidence of him sleeping with his 24-year-old assistant. And he was throwing a party to celebrate our enduring love. It was a trap. It was a brilliant, diabolical trap. If I did not show up, I would look like the bitter, unstable wife he had been painting me as. I would look like the villain who was refusing to work on the marriage. If I did show up, I would be forced to play the role of the happy wife. I would have to smile while he put his arm around me. I would have to let him control the narrative in front of everyone we knew. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Sarah, my best friend from law school. "Haley, are you okay? Brett told us you have been having a hard time lately. He said you are dealing with some depression. We are all rooting for you guys." Depression. So that was the story. He was telling people I was mentally ill. He was telling them I was having a breakdown. It explained everything. It explained why I was sleeping in the guest room. It explained why I had cut off the money. It was not because he was a cheater. It was because I was crazy. He was the saintly husband standing by his sick wife. He was the martyr. My hand shook as I held the phone. The rage I felt was different from the cold anger of the last few weeks. This was hot. This was volcanic. He was weaponizing my reputation against me. He was using my silence to build a cage around me. Then my phone rang. The caller ID said Barbara, my mother-in-law. I took a deep breath. I knew exactly how this conversation was going to go. Barbara was the original architect of Brett S. narcissism. She was the one who had taught him that he could do no wrong. I swiped answer. "Hello, Barbara," I said. "Haley." Her voice was tight. It was the voice she used when she wanted to speak to the manager. "Brett tells me you are refusing to come to the barbecue today." "I am not refusing, Barbara," I said calmly. "I am divorcing your son. We are not celebrating an anniversary because the marriage is over." "Oh, stop it," she snapped. "You are being so dramatic. Every marriage has rough patches. Brett told me everything. He told me about your mood swings. He told me about how you cut off his cards. How can you be so cruel to him when he is trying so hard?" "He is trying hard to cover his tracks," I said. "He is cheating on me, Barbara. He has been cheating on me for 3 years. I heard her sigh on the other end of the line. It was a dismissive sound. "Men make mistakes, Haley," she said. "Your father-in-law made mistakes too." But I stayed. I kept the family together because that is what a strong woman does. You do not throw away a life because of a little indiscretion. A little indiscretion. $12,000 was not a little indiscretion. A diamond necklace was not a little indiscretion. Calling me boring on our wedding day was not a little indiscretion. Brett is devastated. Barbara continued, "He is over here right now setting up the grill. He looks so sad, Haley. He just wants to fix this. He invited all your friends because he wants to show you he cares. Do not be selfish. Put on a nice dress and come support your husband. Selfish. That word again. the word they used whenever I refused to set myself on fire to keep them warm. "I will not be there, Barbara," I said, "and neither will the truth if you keep enabling him." I hung up before she could respond. I sat on the edge of the bed. My heart was pounding. Selfish, crazy, depressed. That was the narrative. That was the story they were telling while they ate hamburgers and drank beer in the sunshine. They were going to spend the afternoon shaking their heads and whispering about poor Haley and her mental breakdown. I looked at the group chat again. "Cannot wait to see you guys." A friend wrote, "We are bringing potato salad." Another wrote, "They were all going. They were all walking into the theater of Brett's lies. I needed to stop it. I could not go there and scream. That would only prove his point. If I showed up and made a scene, I would be the crazy wife. I needed to nuke the party from orbit. I needed something undeniable." I thought about the Project Austin folder. The photos were damaging, but they could be explained away. He could say they were old. He could say they were photoshopped. I needed his voice. I needed his own words. And then I remembered the Tesla. Brett drove a luxury electric car that I made the lease payments on. It was his pride and joy. It was equipped with internal and external cameras. It recorded everything. Brett was tech-savvy, but he was also lazy. He had set up the cloud account for the car using our joint family email address because he could never remember the password to his personal one. I opened my laptop. I logged into the car's dashboard portal. I had never checked it before. I had never had a reason to. I clicked on the tab labeled Saved Clips. There were hundreds of files. Most of them were boring. Traffic, parking lots. But I was looking for dates. I scrolled back to last month. I found a clip dated 3 weeks ago. The timestamp was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I clicked play. The video opened. It was the interior camera view. Brett was driving. He was wearing his sunglasses. The sun was shining. Kayla was in the passenger seat. She had her feet up on the dashboard. She was wearing a short skirt. She was laughing. I turned up the volume. "I cannot believe she did not notice the transfer," Kayla said. She was looking at her phone. Brett laughed. He took one hand off the wheel and rested it on her knee. "My wife is so stupid," he said. The words were crisp and clear. The high-quality microphone captured every syllable. He squeezed Kayla's knee. "She is a workhorse," he continued. "She just puts her head down and grinds. She thinks if she makes enough money, I will finally respect her. It is pathetic, honestly." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Pathetic. Stupid. Those were the words he used for the woman who paid for the car he was driving. He looked at Kayla and grinned. "I just transferred another $5,000 into the joint savings," he said. "She thinks it is for a bathroom renovation, but that is enough for us to go to Cabo next week, baby. First class this time." Kayla squealed. "You are the best," she said. She leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. "I love it when you spend her money on me. It makes it hotter. It makes it hotter." I paused the video. I stared at the frozen image of my husband and his mistress laughing at my expense. This was it. This was not a mistake. This was not a misunderstanding. This was malice. This was hate. This was the smoking gun that Sloane Harper had talked about. I downloaded the clip. I checked the time. It was 1:45 in the afternoon. The party started at 2. People would be arriving. They would be getting their drinks. They would be asking where Haley was. Brett would be putting on his sad face. He would be telling them I was at home resting. He would be accepting their sympathy. I opened Google Drive. I uploaded the video file. I named it Happy Anniversary. I changed the sharing settings. Anyone with the link can view. I copied the link. I opened the Summer BBQ group chat on my phone. I watched the bubbles appear. People were sending photos of the setup. There were balloons. There was a banner that said, Happy Anniversary. It was grotesque. I typed a message. I am sorry I cannot be there today to celebrate. I know Brett has been telling everyone that I am struggling with my mental health. He is right. I have been struggling to understand how I married a man who thinks so little of me. I pasted the link. Turn up the volume, I added. Happy Anniversary, Brett. I hit send. I stared at the screen. Delivered. Read by Sarah. Read by Mike. Read by Cousin Jen. Read by Barbara. The group chat went silent. The stream of photos stopped. The bubbles disappeared. I imagined the scene at his parents' house. I imagined the phones buzzing in pockets. I imagined people pulling them out. I imagined the confusion. I imagined someone clicking the link. I imagined the sound of Brett's voice coming out of a speaker. My wife is so stupid. I imagined the silence falling over the backyard. I imagined Barbara watching the video. I imagined her hearing her son call me pathetic. I imagined her hearing him admit to stealing $5,000 for a vacation with another woman. I imagined Brett standing by the grill with his spatula in his hand, waiting for the applause that would never come. 10 minutes passed. My phone started to vibrate. It was not a text. It was a call. Brett. I declined it. It rang again immediately. Brett. I declined it. Then a text came through. What did you do? Then another. Take it down. Take it down right now, Haley. You are ruining everything. I smiled. I was not ruining everything. I was just correcting the record. Then came a text from Sarah. Oh my God, Haley. I had no idea. I am so sorry. I am leaving right now. Then a text from his cousin. This is sick. I am done with him. The dominoes were falling. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My phone continued to buzz on the counter. It was a constant, angry vibration. It sounded like a hive of bees that had been kicked over. I did not look at it. I drank my water. I pictured the party disbanding. I pictured the guests awkwardly setting down their beer bottles and walking to their cars. I pictured Barbara trying to explain it away, but failing because the video was too clear. There was no context that could save him this time. He had called me stupid. He had admitted to theft. He had mocked me for working hard to support him, and he had done it in front of everyone we knew. The smear campaign was over. The victim narrative was dead. He was not the suffering husband anymore. He was the villain. And I was the director who had just released the final cut of the movie. The Monday morning after the barbecue incident felt like the calm after a hurricane. I walked into the glass-walled lobby of my consulting firm with my head held high. I was wearing my sharpest navy blue suit and the heels that made me stand just a little bit taller. I held a latte in one hand and my leather portfolio in the other. I felt invincible. I had detonated the nuclear bomb in the group chat on Saturday. The fallout had been spectacular. My phone had been flooded with messages of support and shock. Brett had gone silent. His mother had gone silent. The gaslighting narrative that I was crazy and depressed had been obliterated by the recording of his own voice calling me stupid and admitting to theft. I thought he was done. I thought he was hiding in his parents' basement licking his wounds. I was wrong. I underestimated the desperation of a narcissist who has lost control. When you strip away their mask, they do not just retreat. They attack. And if they cannot control you anymore, they will try to destroy the way the rest of the world sees you. I was sitting at my desk reviewing a slide deck for a merger when the elevator doors opened. I heard the commotion before I saw it. "Whoa," someone said. "That is a lot of flowers." I did not look up. I was focused on the quarterly projections. Then the smell hit me. It was the cloying, overwhelming scent of red roses. It smelled like a funeral home. It smelled thick and heavy. "Excuse me," a delivery man said. "I am looking for Haley Harrison." My stomach dropped. I spun my chair around. The delivery man was struggling to carry a floral arrangement that was so large it was obscene. It was a monstrosity of red roses and baby breath and cascading greenery. It looked like something a mafia don would send to a rival. It was aggressive in its size. It took up the entire width of the hallway. "I am Haley," I said. My voice was tight. "Sign here, please." He grunted. He set the vase down on the reception desk. It was so heavy it made a thud. Every head in the open plan office turned. People stopped typing. People paused their calls. In the sterile world of corporate consulting, a display like this was not romantic. It was a disruption. It was unprofessional. The receptionist looked at me with wide eyes. "Wow," she whispered. "Someone is popular." She reached into the forest of red petals and pulled out a card. It was an oversized white envelope. I walked over to the desk. I could feel the eyes of my colleagues on my back. I could feel the curiosity radiating off them. Who sends flowers like that on a Monday morning? Is it an anniversary? Is it an apology? I took the card. My hands were shaking slightly. I knew this was not a gesture of love. Brett did not have the money for this. He had $50 to his name. He must have borrowed money from his mother or put it on a card I did not know about just to make this scene happen. I opened the envelope. The handwriting was not Brett's. It was the neat script of the florist. But the words were his. They were calculated. They were vicious. They were designed to kill my career. I read them. I forgive you for Saturday. I know you are not yourself right now. Please remember to take your medication today. We can get through this crisis together. Love your husband. The air left my lungs. Please remember to take your medication. He was doing it again. He was planting the seed of instability. He knew that in my industry, reputation was everything. Clients paid us thousands of dollars an hour for our judgment. They paid us for our clarity. They paid us for our stability. If my colleagues thought I was having a mental health crisis, if they thought I was medicated and erratic, if they thought I was a liability, my career would be over. I looked up. The receptionist was looking at the card. The text was large enough that she could probably read it upside down. I saw the shift in her expression. It went from admiration to pity. It went from wow to oh, poor thing. I crumpled the card in my hand. Is everything okay, Haley? She asked. Her voice was too gentle. Everything is fine, I said. Please have maintenance remove these. I do not want them at my desk. I turned around and walked back to my office. I could hear the whispers starting. Did you see that note? Is she okay? I heard she is going through a messy divorce. Maybe she needs time off. The poison was spreading. He had injected it right into the bloodstream of my professional life. 10 minutes later, my internal chat pinged. It was Patricia, the managing partner. My boss. Haley, can you come to my office, please? I stared at the message. This was it. The conversation about my performance. The conversation about whether my personal life was affecting my work. The conversation where I got placed on leave for my own good. Brett had won this round. He had forced me into a corner. I closed my laptop. I took a deep breath. I did not cry. Crying would validate the flowers. Crying would prove that I was the fragile, broken woman he wanted me to be. I opened my bag. I pulled out a blue file folder. Sloane Harper had given it to me. She had called it the Shield. Inside was a copy of the temporary restraining order we had filed that morning. Inside was a copy of the forensic accounting report showing the theft. Inside was a printed transcript of the video where he called me stupid. I smoothed my skirt. I picked up the folder. I walked to Patricia S.'s office. The glass walls were soundproof, but they were transparent. Everyone could see me walking in. Everyone could see the serious look on Patricia S.'s face. She was sitting behind her desk. She looked concerned. "Sit down, Haley," she said. I sat. I placed the folder on my lap. "I wanted to ask you how you are doing," Patricia started. She gestured vaguely toward the door where the flowers had been. "That was quite a display. And I heard about the note. News traveled fast." "I am fine, Patricia," I said. "Are you?" she asked. She leaned forward. "Look, Haley, you are one of my best consultants. You are brilliant. But if you are struggling, if there is a medical issue or a personal crisis that requires time off, I need you to tell me. We can support you, but we cannot have unpredictability with the clients." There it was, the doubt. The seed had taken root. I looked her in the eye. "Patricia," I said, "I am going to be very direct with you because I respect you and I respect this firm." I placed the blue folder on her desk. I am not having a mental health crisis. I am not on medication for instability, and I am not struggling with my performance. I opened the folder. What you saw out there was not a romantic gesture. It was an act of harassment. It was a calculated attempt by my estranged husband to sabotage my professional reputation because he has lost control of our domestic situation. Patricia looked down at the documents. I pointed to the top paper. This is a temporary restraining order that was filed this morning by my attorney, Sloan Harper. It details a pattern of financial fraud, emotional abuse, and harassment. I turned the page. This is a transcript of a video where my husband admits to stealing $5,000 from our joint account to fund a vacation with his mistress. I turned the page again. And this is an email from his mother threatening to come to this office to make a scene if I do not reconcile with him. Patricia stared at the papers. Her eyes moved back and forth, scanning the legal language. She read the words, fraud. She read the words, harassment. She read the name, Sloan Harper. She looked up at me. The concern in her eyes had vanished. It was replaced by a hard, cold anger. But the anger was not directed at me. "He sent those flowers to discredit you," she stated. It was a realization. "Yes," I said. "He knew that if he painted me as unstable, it would damage my standing here. He is trying to cut off my income because I have cut off his." Patricia closed the folder. She placed her hand on top of it. She took a deep breath. She picked up her phone. She dialed a 4-digit extension. "Security," she said. "This is Patricia. I need you to update our banned visitor list immediately. The name is Brett Harrison. I also want a flag on any deliveries addressed to Haley Harrison. Nothing comes up to this floor without being screened. If he shows up in the lobby, I want the police called. Do you understand?" She listened for a moment. "Yes, immediately. Thank you." She hung up. She looked at me. "I apologize, Haley," she said. "I should have known better than to believe a note on a bouquet of roses. You have never given me a single reason to doubt your stability." "Thank you, Patricia," I said. "Take the rest of the day if you need to handle the legal side," she offered. "No," I said. I stood up. I picked up my folder. "That is exactly what he wants. He wants me to go home and hide. He wants to disrupt my billable hours." I smoothed my blazer. "I have a merger to close. If you do not mind, I would like to get back to work." Patricia smiled. It was a smile of genuine respect. "Go get them, Haley," she said. I walked out of her office. I walked past the reception desk where the flowers were being shoved into a large trash bin by the maintenance staff. I watched the red petals get crushed against the plastic liner. I watched the card with his lies disappear into the garbage. I walked back to my desk. My colleagues were still watching. They were waiting to see if I was fired. They were waiting to see me cry. I sat down. I opened my laptop. I typed my password. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for the client. "Hello, this is Haley Harrison," I said. My voice was strong. My voice was clear. "I have the updated projections ready for review." Brett had fired his last shot. He had tried to hit me where I lived. Failed. He had tried to hit me in my social circle. Failed. He had tried to hit me in my career. Failed. He had nothing left. He was a man standing in an empty room, screaming at walls that were closing in on him, and I was the woman who had built the walls. I focused on the spreadsheet in front of me. The numbers were clean. The logic was sound. I was safe here. The fortress was secure. The Travis County Courthouse was a building designed to make you feel small. The ceilings were too high, and the marble floors echoed with the footsteps of people whose lives were being dismantled one legal filing at a time. I sat at the mahogany table on the right side of the courtroom. My hands were clasped in front of me on top of a thick binder labeled plaintiff. I was wearing a black sheath dress and a blazer that made me feel like armor. Beside me sat Sloan Harper. She was the calmest person in the room. She was arranging her pens in a perfect line. On the other side of the aisle sat Brett. He looked terrible. The arrogance that had defined him for 3 years was gone. His suit was wrinkled. It was an off-the-rack suit because I had stopped paying for his tailoring. His hair was slightly too long. He looked like a man who was sleeping on a couch and eating fast food, which was exactly what he was doing. Next to him sat his attorney. He was a man named Mr. Rickman, who wore a tie that was too bright and a cologne that I could smell from 10 feet away. He was the kind of lawyer you hired from a billboard on the side of the highway when you had no money left. In the back of the courtroom sat the spectators. There were only a few. And there in the back row sat Kayla. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a trench coat, as if she were a celebrity trying to go incognito. She was chewing gum nervously. She had come to support her man. She had come to watch him defeat the evil, controlling wife. The bailiff announced the arrival of Judge Patterson. We all stood. The judge was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose and an expression that said she had zero patience for nonsense. "Be seated," she said. Mr. Rickman stood up immediately. He did not wait for an invitation. He buttoned his jacket and strode toward the center of the room. He looked at me with a sneer. "Your Honor," he began. His voice was booming and theatrical. "We are here today because my client is the victim of a systematic campaign of harassment and illegal surveillance. The petitioner, Haley Harrison, has violated the sanctity of privacy. She has hacked his computer. She has tracked his vehicle. She has recorded private conversations without consent." He pointed a finger at me. "This woman is not a victim, Your Honor. She is a cyberstalker. The evidence she claims to have is fruit of the poisonous tree. It was obtained illegally. We moved to have all evidence of the alleged infidelity suppressed, and we are countersuing for invasion of privacy and defamation of character." Brett nodded vigorously at the table. He looked righteous. He looked like he believed his own lies. I felt a spike of adrenaline in my chest. My palms began to sweat. Sloane placed a hand on my arm. Her touch was light but firm. It was a signal. "Stay still." Mr. Rickman continued for 10 minutes. He painted a picture of a paranoid, jealous wife who spent her days hacking into accounts and ruining her husband's reputation. He talked about the video I posted in the group chat. He called it revenge porn adjacent. He was throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick. When he finally sat down, he looked smug. Brett leaned over and whispered something to him. They both smirked. Judge Patterson looked at Sloane. "Ms. Harper," the judge said, "do you have a response?" Sloane stood up. She did not button her jacket. She did not stride to the center of the room. She stood behind the table and adjusted her glasses. "Your Honor," Sloane said. Her voice was low. It forced everyone in the room to lean in to hear her. "We are not here to debate the ethics of a wife discovering her husband's infidelity on a family computer that she purchased. We are here to discuss felony fraud." The room went silent. Brett stopped smirking. Mr. Rickman frowned. "Fraud," the judge repeated. "Yes, Your Honor," Sloane said. "While Mr. Harrison is worried about his privacy, my client has been worried about the systematic theft of her assets. During the discovery phase of this divorce, we uncovered a series of financial irregularities that go far beyond a few expensive dinners." Sloane picked up a document from her table. She walked toward the bench and handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. She handed a copy to Mr. Rickman. "This is Exhibit C," Sloane said. I watched Brett take the paper from his lawyer. I watched his eyes scan the document. I saw the color drain from his face. It happened in an instant. He went from flushed to ghostly white. "This is a loan application for a small business line of credit," Sloane explained to the room. "The loan amount is $50,000. It was taken out 6 months ago from a regional bank." I looked at Brett. His hands were shaking. "The loan was taken out in the name of a registered entity called Harrison Consulting Group." Sloane continued. "However, the personal guarantor on the loan is my client, Haley Harrison. I had never heard of Harrison Consulting Group. I had never signed a loan for $50,000. "Please look at the signature on page 4, Sloane said. The judge flipped the page. She peered through her glasses. "Ms. Harrison," Sloane said, turning to me, "did you sign this document?" "No," I said clearly. "I have never seen this document before in my life." Sloane turned back to the judge. "We hired a handwriting expert to analyze the signature, Your Honor. The report is attached as Exhibit D. The signature is a forgery. Mr. Harrison forged his wife's signature to secure $50,000 in credit because his own credit score was too low to qualify." Mr. Rickman stood up. "Objection!" he shouted. "This is speculation. It is not speculation." Sloane cut him off. Her voice turned sharp. "We have the IP address log from the electronic signing ceremony. It matches the IP address of the hotel in Aspen, where Mr. Harrison was staying with his mistress on the date the loan was finalized." Brett sank lower in his chair. He looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. But Sloane was not done. She was just getting started. "And where did that $50,000 go?" Sloan asked rhetorically. "Did it go to business expenses? Did it go to marketing?" "No." She held up another piece of paper. "Exhibit E, the bill of sale from a luxury car dealership in Dallas." I held my breath. I knew this part was coming, but hearing it out loud felt surreal. "The entire loan amount was used to purchase a white Audi Q5, Sloan said. "The vehicle is registered to the shell company Harrison Consulting Group, but we have toll tag records and GPS data showing that the car is parked every night at an apartment complex in North Austin." Sloan turned slowly and looked toward the back of the courtroom. She looked directly at Kayla. "The car is currently being driven by Ms. Kayla Miller," Sloan said. "Mr. Harrison committed bank fraud and identity theft to buy a luxury car for his girlfriend while using his wife's credit as collateral." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Every head turned to look at Kayla. She was frozen. Her mouth was slightly open. She looked from Sloan to Brett. Brett would not look at her. He was staring at the table. He was gripping the edge of the wood so hard his knuckles were white. "This is not just a civil matter, Your Honor," Sloan said. Her voice was like a hammer hitting a nail. "This is criminal fraud. My client is currently liable for a $50,000 debt for a car she has never driven." Sloan paused. She walked back to our table and picked up one last file. It was a thick red folder. "Mr. Harrison and his counsel want to talk about privacy," Sloan said. "They want to talk about fairness. But they have forgotten one very important entity." She dropped the red folder onto the table. It made a loud slap. "The Internal Revenue Service." Brett flinched. "Mr. Harrison has not declared this loan on his taxes," Sloan said. "He has been using the shell company to hide assets and income for 2 years. We have the forensic accounting report right here." She looked at Brett. "If we do not reach a satisfactory settlement today regarding the division of assets, my client has instructed me to forward this entire file to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division immediately following this hearing." She let the threat hang in the air. Federal prison. That was what she was saying without saying it. Brett looked at his lawyer. Mr. Rickman looked terrified. He was a strip mall lawyer. He was not prepared for federal tax fraud. He was whispering frantically to Brett. I looked at the back of the room. Kayla stood up. She did not wait for the judge to dismiss us. She did not wait for Brett to explain. She looked at Brett with a look of absolute disgust. She realized in that moment that the luxury car she drove was stolen property. She realized that her boyfriend was not a wealthy entrepreneur, but a fraud who had forged his wife's name. She realized that the car was about to be repossessed and that her boyfriend might be going to jail. She buttoned her trench coat. She grabbed her purse. She turned and walked out of the courtroom. The sound of the heavy wooden door closing behind her was the final punctuation mark on Brett's life. Brett turned his head. He watched her go. The desperation in his eyes was pathetic. He looked back at me. I stared him down. I did not blink. He mouthed one word. "Please." I looked away. Judge Patterson cleared her throat. She looked at Brett over the top of her glasses. "Mr. Rickman," she said. Her voice was icy. "I suggest you take a recess and speak to your client. If these allegations are true, I am going to refer this to the district attorney myself. I have zero tolerance for forgery in my courtroom. We will take the recess, Your Honor." Mr. Rickman squeaked. They went into the hallway. They were gone for 10 minutes. When they came back, Brett looked like a broken man. He was slumped over. His fight was gone. "Your Honor," Mr. Rickman said. His voice was subdued. "We have reached an agreement." I listened as they read the terms. They were everything I wanted. They were everything Sloan had promised. I retained sole ownership of the marital residence. The house was mine. I retained 100% of my retirement accounts. And then came the restitution. Mr. Harrison agrees to assume full liability for the $50,000 business loan. The judge read from the agreement. He agrees to refinance the loan out of Ms. Harrison's name within 30 days. Furthermore, he agrees to pay restitution to Ms. Harrison in the amount of $25,000 for marital funds misappropriated during the marriage. The judge looked at Brett. "Do you understand that this debt is part of a divorce decree, Mr. Harrison?" she asked. Yes, Brett whispered. Do you understand that this debt is non-dischargeable in bankruptcy? She asked. That means you cannot erase it. You will owe this money until the day it is paid in full. If you default, Ms. Harrison can garnish your wages. Yes, he whispered. And the car? The judge asked. Mr. Rickman cleared his throat. The vehicle will be surrendered to the bank immediately to satisfy a portion of the loan. I smiled. Kayla was walking home today. So ordered, Judge Patterson said. She banged her gavel. The sound rang through the room. It was over. I stood up. I shook Sloane's hand. Thank you, I said. Worth every penny, she replied with a wink. I gathered my files. I picked up my purse. I walked toward the aisle. Brett was still sitting at the table. He had his head in his hands. I stopped next to him. He looked up. His eyes were red. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing candy. Haley, he said. Don't, I said. I looked at him one last time. I looked at the man I had married. I looked at the man I had tried so hard to please. I looked at the man who had called me stupid. You have a debt to pay, Brett, I said. You better start working. I hear Uber is hiring. I turned and walked away. I walked down the center aisle of the courtroom. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors. I stepped out into the hallway. The air was cool. I was single. I was wealthy. I was free. And I owned a 4,000-square-foot house that was completely empty of trash. 6 months is a long time in the life of a lie, but it is a short time in the life of a healing woman. I stood in the center of my living room and rotated slowly. The late afternoon sun was pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air. For 3 years, I had looked at this room and felt anxiety. I had worried about coasters. I had worried about shoe prints on the rug. I had worried about whether the throw pillows were chopped perfectly in the middle to look like a magazine spread. Today, I just saw color. I had spent the last weekend painting. I did it myself. I did not hire a crew. I bought 5 gallons of paint and a roller, and I spent 2 days covering up the sterile, stark white walls that Brett had insisted upon. He had called the white paint investment potential. He said it was clean. He said it was modern. He said it was what buyers wanted to see. I had painted the walls sage green. It was a soft, earthy color. It looked like the underside of a leaf or the water of a calm river. I remembered when I had suggested this color 2 years ago. Brett had sneered. He had called it depressing. He had said it looked like hospital vomit. He had told me I had zero taste and that I should leave the aesthetics to him because he was the real estate expert. Looking at it now, I realized he was wrong about the color, just like he was wrong about everything else. It did not look depressing. It looked like a sanctuary. It looked like a deep breath. I walked over to the sofa. It was the same sofa, but I had bought new blankets. I had replaced the stiff, scratchy wool throws that scratched my skin with soft velvet ones. I sat down and ran my hand over the fabric. My life had become softer. The sharp edges were gone. The constant feeling of walking on eggshells was gone. The need to perform was gone. I thought about the man who used to rule this house like a tyrant. News traveled fast in Austin. Even though I had blocked his number and unfollowed his socials, the grapevine was efficient. Brett was living in his parents' basement. It was a literal basement. It was a finished room with small, high windows that let in very little light. His mother, Barbara, had taken him in because she had to. She was his mother. But even her patience had limits. I heard through a mutual friend that the living arrangement was tense. Barbara was tired of his moping. She was tired of his excuses. She was tired of him eating her food and complaining about her cooking. He had lost everything. The court order regarding the $50,000 loan had destroyed him. He could not refinance it. No bank would touch him with his credit score and the fraud allegations attached to his name. The luxury Audi Q5 had been repossessed. I had seen the tow truck take it from the apartment complex where Kayla lived. It was a humiliating spectacle. The neighbors had watched as the white SUV was hooked up and dragged away. Kayla had not taken it well. According to Instagram, she had blocked Brett the day the car was taken. She had scrubbed him from her feed. The photos of them in Cabo and Napa and Aspen were gone. It was as if he had never existed. She was 24. She was young. She was opportunistic. She had attached herself to Brett because she thought he was a winner. She thought he was a rich, successful broker who could buy her diamonds and take her on first-class trips. When she realized he was a broke fraudster living on his wife's dime, she cut her losses. Last I heard, she was back on Tinder. She was swiping right on guys with boat photos. She was looking for the next host. And Brett. He had lost his license. The fraud conviction and the report to the ethics board had been the final nail in the coffin. No brokerage in Texas would hire him. The real estate community was small and talkative. Everyone knew he had forged his wife's signature. Everyone knew he had stolen client leads. Everyone knew he was a liability. He was currently working part-time at a car rental agency near the airport. He was checking cars for dents and scratches. He was wearing a polyester uniform that I was sure he hated. It was a steep fall from the penthouse to the pavement. I stood up and walked into the master bedroom. This room had changed the most. I had sold the bed. I could not sleep on the mattress where he had lied to me. I could not sleep on the sheets where he had rested his head after coming home from her. I had bought a new frame. It was made of warm walnut wood, and I had splurged on the bedding. I bought silk sheets, real mulberry silk in a champagne color. They were ridiculously expensive. They were high maintenance. You had to wash them on a delicate cycle and air dry them. Brett would have hated them. He would have said they were slippery. He would have complained about the washing instructions. He would have said it was a waste of money that could have been invested in cryptocurrency or a new watch. I loved them. I slept in the middle of the bed now. I sprawled out like a starfish. I woke up in the morning and the first thing I felt was the cool, smooth fabric against my skin. It felt like luxury. It felt like I was treating myself like a queen. I walked to the closet. His side was empty. The rows of suits were gone. The shelves of shoes were gone. The drawer full of watches was gone. I had filled the space with my own things. I had moved my winter coats in. I had organized my handbags. I had expanded my territory. The house finally fit me. It did not feel too big anymore. It felt just right. I heard the front door open downstairs. "Haley," a voice called out. It was warm and familiar. "I am upstairs, Mom," I yelled back. I smiled. 6 months ago, I would have been panicking right now. I would have been checking the cushions for crumbs. I would have been checking my makeup. I would have been worried that Brett would be rude to my mother or make a passive-aggressive comment about her visiting too often. Now I just felt happy. I walked downstairs. My mother was in the kitchen. She was carrying a reusable grocery bag and a bottle of wine. "I brought the good stuff," she said. She held up a bottle of Chardonnay. "And I brought the ingredients for your favorite pot roast." I hugged her. She smelled like lavender laundry detergent and comfort. "You did not have to bring dinner," I said. "I was going to order Thai." "Nonsense," she said. "We are celebrating." "Celebrating what?" I asked. She looked at me. She reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Celebrating you," she said. "Celebrating the fact that you look 10 years younger than you did 6 months ago." She was right. The stress lines around my eyes had faded. The tension in my jaw was gone. I had gained 5 pounds and I looked healthy. I looked like a woman who actually ate dinner instead of just picking at a salad while worrying about her husband's mood. We cooked together. We chopped carrots and potatoes. We laughed about nothing. We drank the wine while the roast simmered in the Dutch oven. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and thyme and garlic. It smelled like a home. We sat at the dining table. It was the same quartz table where I had sat alone on my 30th birthday. It was the same table where I had poured the $200 wine down the drain. But the energy was different now. The table was not a stage for a tragedy. It was just a table. We ate. We talked about my job. I told her about the new client I had landed. I told her about the promotion Patricia had hinted at. We talked about her garden. We talked about my brother. We did not talk about Brett. He was not an invited guest at this dinner. He did not deserve a seat at the table, even in conversation. Toward the end of the meal, my phone buzzed on the table. It was lying face up next to my wine glass. I glanced at it. I saw the name, Brett. My stomach did not drop. My heart did not race. I felt a mild annoyance like a fly buzzing near my ear. I picked up the phone. I unlocked the screen. I read the message. "I miss you." I paused. I waited for the rest of it. Usually these texts came in clusters. "We can make it work," he wrote. "I am a different man now. I have learned my lesson. We can try again." And then the third message appeared. "I am so hungry, Haley." I stared at the words. "I am so hungry." He meant it literally. He was hungry. He was probably eating ramen noodles in his mother's basement. He was hungry for the food I used to cook, but he meant it metaphorically too. He was hungry for the lifestyle. He was hungry for the credit cards. He was hungry for the status. He was hungry for the supply that I had provided for 3 years. He was a parasite looking for a host. He was not missing me. He was missing the access. He was missing the convenience. He was missing the woman who cleaned up his messes and paid his bills and made him look like a king. I looked across the table at my mother. She was buttering a piece of bread. She looked happy. "Is everything okay?" she asked, noticing my silence. I looked at the phone again. I had a choice. I could reply. I could tell him to go to hell. I could tell him that he had his chance. I could tell him that he was pathetic. I could block him. I could erase his ability to reach me. But blocking him felt like a reaction. It felt like I was afraid of him. It felt like I needed to put up a wall to protect myself. I was not afraid of him anymore. I did not need a wall. I was the wall. I swiped left on the message thread. Delete. Confirm deletion. Yes. The messages vanished. I did not block him. I wanted him to see that his messages were delivered. I wanted him to see the little receipts. I wanted him to know that I saw them. I read them. And I did not care enough to respond. Silence is not just the absence of noise, it is the presence of indifference. It is the ultimate rejection. It says, "You are not worth my anger. You are not worth my words. You are not worth the energy it takes to type a single letter." I put the phone back down on the table, face down. "Who was that?" my mom asked. "Nobody," I said. "Just a spam text." I picked up my wine glass. "To new beginnings," I said. My mom clinked her glass against mine. "To new beginnings." She smiled. We finished dinner. We cleared the plates. We put the dishes in the dishwasher. My mom left around 9. I walked her to her car. I hugged her tight. "Thank you," I said. "For the roast?" She asked. "For believing me," I said. She squeezed my hand. "Always." I watched her drive away. I walked back into the house. I locked the front door. I turned off the lights downstairs. The house was quiet. I walked up to the master bedroom. I opened the glass doors to the balcony. The night air was cool. It was late autumn now. The humidity of the Texas summer had broken. The air felt crisp and clean. I stepped out onto the balcony. I looked out over the neighborhood. I could see the lights of the other houses. I could see the street lamps. I could see the stars. I took a deep breath. I filled my lungs with the cool air. I thought about the last 6 months. It had been the hardest fight of my life. It had cost me thousands of dollars in legal fees. It had cost me sleepless nights. It had cost me the illusion of the perfect marriage. I had lost a husband. I had lost the future I thought I was supposed to have. But as I stood there gripping the railing, I did not feel a sense of loss. I felt lighter. I had carried a dead weight for 3 years. I had dragged a man through life who refused to walk on his own. I had paid for his mistakes. I had apologized for his cruelty. I had diminished myself to make him feel big. Now I was standing at my full height. I was 30 years old. I was a successful professional. I was a homeowner. I was a survivor of financial abuse and emotional manipulation. I had walked through the fire, and I had not burned. I had come out the other side as forged steel. I looked down at my hand. The ring finger was bare. It did not look empty. It looked free. I remembered the moment I put the ring on the counter. I remembered the tiny click it made. That click was the sound of my life beginning. I looked up at the moon. It was full and bright. "I am not hungry," I whispered to the night air. "I am full. I am full of peace. I am full of strength. I am full of a life that finally belongs to me. And that is worth every single penny." We often mistake endurance for love, believing that suffering for someone makes the bond stronger. But a relationship shouldn't be a test of how much pain you can withstand. My freedom didn't begin when the judge signed the papers. It began the moment I realized that my self-worth wasn't a negotiable currency. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. Walking away wasn't about giving up on him. It was about finally showing up for myself. The most expensive thing I ever paid for was my past, but my future, that belongs entirely to me.